any members of the family wrongfully arrested and held to this day without charges. So we're going to continue to work with their family to move that.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. The reason we showed this clip was because it happened in the backyard of where Hassan is from, and he will tell you, you saw how you are able to take a very bad situation and turn into what many of the media professionals in the modern day have called a turning point of the PR against Israeli occupation of Palestine. But many national editorials commented that this was a pivotal event that changed the public opinion of the policies of the Israeli state. And that happened because there are people like Brother Hassan who took the opportunity to take this challenge and highlight the issues that are at hand. And you hear more from Hassan. And I want to give you a little bit of introduction to Hassan. Hassan's parents are original immigrants from Syria. They lived in New York, in Buffalo. He grew up at a young age in New York. He went to school in State University of New York and graduated as magna cum laude, and went to law school there, and as well as graduated at the top of the school. He chose to take his profession and turn it into more impactful rather than work for a law firm or perhaps earning a lot more money. To me, to us, it's an inspiration of what human beings can do to make life better beneficial to all of us. And we are more proud of the fact that as a Muslim, he has made a difference to a lot of us, not only in the US, but also in the broader Muslim world. With that introduction, he's typically a very busy man because he's executive director of CAIR Florida. He just finished his banquet last week in Florida, and we have enticed him to come to take a vacation with his family and come here and spend the weekend with us. So inshallah, at the same time, we can benefit from his knowledge. With that, I will give it over to Brother Hassan Shibly.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. Can the sisters here? We're good, inshallah. So normally I wouldn't be too comfortable showing that kind of clip in the masjid, but I guess it's what they have to do. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with us. Alhamdulillah, I mean, there's tremendous impact that the American Muslim community can have on the situation of civil rights and human rights, not just in America but throughout the world. And it's because of that tremendous impact that we find the American Muslim community is often being challenged on its very right to exist. The Islamophobia movement started years ago, and they've done tremendous things that don't just hurt the Muslim community, but really things that hurt America as a whole. A very simple example of that is the anti-Sharia legislation they tried to pass, which originally was in Tennessee. And inshallah, if we can have just the kids and the people in the back quiet down just so the audience can hear, and I don't lose my voice so fast. So, in Tennessee, they actually tried to pass a law. How many of you have heard about the anti-Muslim legislation they tried to pass in Tennessee? Raise your hands up and high. MashaAllah, good. So that means you must have an active chapter of CAIR here. I'm proud of you, Hassan. You're doing good work. Because in a lot of communities, less than 10% know. How many people haven't heard of the anti-Sharia bill they tried to pass in Tennessee? Raise your hand. So a few. We need to be more involved, and I appreciate you volunteering that. In Tennessee, and the reason I asked is so I know I can talk about it if you haven't heard about it, but in Tennessee they tried to pass a law saying adherence to Sharia, adherence to Islam is a felony punishable by 20 years in jail. Now, as a lawyer and as an American, that offends me as an American, and as a lawyer before it offends me as a Muslim. It doesn't just hurt the Muslim community, but it hurts America as a whole. And therefore, I think it's our duty as Muslims and as Americans to stand up against the Islamophobia industry, because Islamophobia is bad for the US, it's bad for America as a whole. It isn't just bad for the Muslim community, and that's how we challenge it. Right? Islamophobia is un-American. It undermines the liberty and the foundations that make America so great. But my frustration is really not with the Islamophobia industry, because they're working for what they believe in. The beautiful thing about this country is we likewise have the freedom and the opportunity to work for what we believe in. And when we engage the society constructively and positively, we can have a tremendous impact never before imagined as possible. And I think the case of Tariq there is a perfect example of that. Literally, when I went and I heard about Tariq being beaten up by the Israeli police, I asked his aunt if we can help. She said, no, you can't, because there's nothing you can do. And that's the mentality we often have in America. Oh, the Zionist lobby is so strong, the Islamophobia lobby is so strong, there's nothing we can do, and therefore we take that as an excuse to be lazy and do nothing. Whereas the Sahaba, they did not look at the odds, they looked at the creator of the odds, Rabbul Alameen. And they put forth their best effort, and they worked sincerely for the sake of Allah, and Allah blessed them with beautiful and very strong results when they worked sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what Allah wants from us. If Allah wanted to, He could have made all people Muslim, and He could have eradicated injustice from the face of the earth. Rather, He allows a level of injustice to occur. He allows Islamophobes to work the unlearn, to see what you and I do in response. You know, one approach is just we hide our Muslim identity, we don't work to create a positive change. Or we say, you know what, the odds are against us, so we're not going to do anything. The other approach is we say, no, Allah tawakkalna, hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. Allah is enough for us. We will do our best. We are responsible for the efforts. Allah is responsible for the results. And we see that when we work, inshallah, sincerely for the sake of Allah, we can see that we have tremendous positive impact in this country. When Tariq was beaten, at my office for 3-4 years, we established contacts with the leading media personalities, both locally in Florida and nationwide. So what we did, how did we get Tariq back home? Very simple. We used the media, but we worked, actually more appropriately say, we worked with the media to expose the injustice. See, the media, they just care about ratings. And they often, many of them really care about the truth. And when you can offer them something unique, they will jump on it. So I had Tariq's uncle come to my office right after Salat al-Jum'ah, and we wrote a press release exposing the injustice that an American teenager faced at the hands of the Israeli police. You know, because this isn't about Israel or America. It's not even about Islam and Judaism. It's about justice and human rights, and that's what Islam really is about. We know our religion, our way of life, it is not a noun. Right? We shouldn't have this group think, this group mentality. Rather, Islam is about establishing justice for all humanity, and Islam is the way of justice. It's a verb, it's an action, it's how we live our life. So I said, don't worry, we'll do our best to bring him home. And we put together a press release, we sent it to all the national and local media outlets that we had. And actually, I called a friend of mine who was a reporter in one of the local news channels, and he came to my office. It was Ramadan, and actually went a little bit late to the masjid because we had to do that interview. We did in the office, and I went to the masjid for iftar and tarawiyah. And subhanAllah, within 48 hours, we had been quoted in over 4,000 news articles, viewed by over 15 million people. Israel, in the history, I mean, it's killed thousands of people. You see what it did in Gaza. But it didn't get as bad publicity as it did from this story. Because of the organization and the preparation that we engaged in to show the truth to the public. To the extent where Netanyahu, the president of Israel, was planning on coming to America, and he canceled that trip for over a month because of how badly it looked in the media. He didn't want to face the public. And we see the tide is changing. See, as Muslims, we often sometimes unfortunately become hopeless. We forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before made the worst enemies of Islam the greatest supporters of Islam. Look at the invasion that happened in Iraq with the Mongols, right? They went and they say they made the blood of Iraq red with our blood and black with the ink of our books. And yet some of the Salihin worked to show the truth to these people and worked to guide them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided them, and they made them the biggest supporters of Islam. So don't lack imagination and hope in the power that Allah can do when you work sincerely for His sake. I've had so many reporters. Actually, the first reporter who broke the story, he sent me an email. I still have it, subhanAllah, I use it as inspiration. He said, Hassan, this story completely changed our perception of what's happening in the Middle East. It's completely changed our understanding of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So that's just one example, alhamdulillah, of the tremendous positive impact that we can have when we organize and work together. To the extent that we set a precedent now. Now Israel knows anytime, and of course there's still so much injustice and there's still so many things we have to overcome, but alhamdulillah, it's a beginning. Don't be impatient. See, often we're impatient. We want either free Palestine today or don't even try. But we work step by step. If we don't see the success until free from Allah, inshallah, it's a sign our children will. We're just responsible for working forth our effort. So there was another child, a Palestinian child, a young girl, who was also locked up by Israel about a month after this happened. So alhamdulillah, we had established our reputation and our ability to work with the media. So I called the White House at 7 o'clock and told them that, another girl was stuck in Palestine. They called me back within 15 minutes. Within an hour, the girl was free. So it happened instant. First it took us 48 hours, and it just took us 1 hour. Because we established the precedent and the power and the impact that we can have. And this is just the beginning. Because unfortunately, as Muslims, we haven't invested yet in the institutions to defend our faith, to defend our community. Look at the Jewish community. The salary of their executive director, and I'm not saying this for any reason, but inshallah sincerely, but the salary of their executive is bigger than the budget of most of our Muslim organizations. Really. I was looking at the budget of CAIR Seattle. Wallahi, the salary of one of the people who works for the Anti-Defamation League is bigger than the entire budget of the money that is being spent to defend Islam and Muslims in Washington State. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Is that the Islamophobes' fault, or is it our fault? That we're not investing in the institutions to defend our faith and our community. And I'll tell you actually, as Washington Muslims, you have a lot to be proud of. Because mashallah, CAIR Washington is one of the strongest and active CAIR teams in the States. And you guys do tremendous work. But this is just the beginning. And as Muslims, growing up as an immigrant in this country, I really noticed that when it comes to defending our civil rights and our faith and our community, we're babies, really. We don't have that many endowments. Most of the Jewish organizations now, they're running off of endowments. In fact, we were defending another Muslim. He was shot and killed by an FBI agent after they questioned him 6-7 hours in his home. The FBI agent, he had a history of beating up suspects and beating up witnesses. He shot the Muslim 3 times in the back, once in the back of the head, 4 times in the front, after 6 hours of interrogation. So we're working with a Jewish lawyer to sue the government. And the guy's like, we need to raise $200,000. I said, no way, brother. That's completely out of our target range. He said, I need to raise that much just to keep my office open. He said, are you serious? He said, if a member of our Jewish community gets hurt, I have dinner, and just within 1 hour we'll raise enough for the case. He's like, why don't you guys invest in protecting your freedom and your justice? And so they're not working for a reward from Allah or the Akhirah, they're just working to protect their dunya. Whereas we need to work to get the pleasure of Allah and also to protect our dunya, but we're still lacking. But alhamdulillah, we see now things are changing. And we're starting to see that there's more and more investment in our civil rights organizations, and that's a beautiful thing. Babies grow quick. And we're seeing tremendously positive impact just from a little effort and a little budget and a few people who are working hard. Imagine as we continue to grow and we invest in institutions to protect our freedom and justice, we'll see a very positive impact going forward. That's just one example, inshallah, of the work that we can accomplish with the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we spoke about in our khutbah, Tariq was only made possible through Islamophobia. He went through it, and even a Jewish child, of course, Israel would have never treated him that way. It's by demonizing Islam, demonizing Muslims, making them look subhuman, that a person can have the audacity to tie the hands of a child and continuously beat him up until he's unconscious. And it's only by the dehumanization of the Muslim people that the American government can fund those kinds of crimes with our tax dollars. Wallahi, if they viewed us as equal human beings, you wouldn't see these policies happening. And so part of the Islamophobia industry, in one level, it's to dehumanize Muslims, but another level is to scare us from practicing our deen, because they know our strength, our izzah, our karama, our honor is by following the deen of Allah, who took us from being small, qalilan, mustad'afuna fil ard, and make us strong and wealthy and powerful in the dunya. And they know that if they can scare us from the deen, they can scare us from Allah, they can scare us from our having a connection with Rasulullah, they can scare us from following the sunnah of Rasulullah, then they can divide us and destroy us. So that's why Islamophobia is spent so much to take us away from the deen. But remember, Allah never takes from the believers. He never takes from the believers, He only gives. So every difficulty we face, every challenge is an opportunity Tariq recognized this. You know, he saw that, alhamdulillah, because of the difficulty he went through, it changed how Israel is starting to be perceived in the American public. He went through a little difficulty, but a lot of good came out of it. And the American Muslim community recognized the power and the potential that they have. So every difficulty we go through is just a sign to wake us up, to make us invest in defending our deen and serving the deen. And the greatest reward of serving the deen and fighting Islamophobia, again, is not that we're strong in the dunya, but it's that we get the hasanat, the ajr of working for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The greatest honor is to be used in defending the deen and in teaching people the deen and helping the poor and the needy. And the greatest humiliation is to be kept back from being in the service of the deen. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes the hypocrites. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And really this is just a reminder for myself first and foremost, and then all of my brothers and sisters. When he speaks about the battle of Tabuk, when the Muslims were to go out in the heat to defend the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some of the hypocrites, they made excuses not to struggle for the sake of Allah. And we all have our different struggle. In America, the struggle for the deen is in education, right? It is in engaging in da'wah. It is in protecting civil rights. It's in protecting justice for all humanity. So they had their form of struggle, and some of them made excuses not to defend the deen. So what does Allah say about them? He says, فَرِحَ الْمُخَلَّفُونَ بِمَقْعَدِهِمْ خِلَافَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. That those who were kept back were happy that they stayed behind Rasulullah. But Allah didn't say those who stayed back were happy. He said those who were kept back were happy. Why? Because Allah kept them back. When you're not being used in the service of the deen, that's a sign that maybe Allah is keeping you back. When we're not opening the Quran every day, maybe that's a sign Allah is keeping us from the Quran. When we're not investing to defend the deen and the civil rights and engage to defend our community and help the poor and needy, maybe that's a sign Allah is keeping us back. But Allah never keeps back those who wish to serve Him, who wish to come close to Him. So make sure we're not staying back. Allah loves those who rush to defend the deen, who rush to defend the poor, who rush to defend justice. That's why Allah describes the opposite in Surah Yasin. He says, وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى. A man came from the farthest part of the town to running to defend the deen. قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اتَّبِعُونِ. He'll say, oh my people, follow the messengers. Allah loves those who rush to defend the deen. He doesn't like those who try to stay back, just to protect their own dunya interests. And wallahi, when we protect the deen, we're only protecting ourselves. When we defend the deen, we're only defending ourselves. When we defend justice and human rights and community service, we're only protecting ourselves. If we don't stand up to defend our neighbors today, whether they're Muslim or not, if we don't stand up to defend justice and human rights today, if we don't stand up with our African American brothers who are facing racism continuously today, then we won't have anybody to stand up for us tomorrow. Islam is a deen of service, community service, defending justice and human rights. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us recognize the honor of defending the deen, and don't despair from the negativity that we often see. You know, my teacher taught me something. He said, subhanAllah, that we see the clock on the wall, how the clock is moving forward. But if you take the clock off, the face of the clock off, in order for the clock to move forward, you have to take the gears backwards. You have to turn the gears backwards for the clock to move forward. Same way, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes sees that we become too comfortable in the dunya, we're not struggling for the deen, we're not proving our love for Allah by struggling for the deen, by sacrificing, by investing some of our time, our sweat, our energy to serve the deen, to engage in da'wah, to fight injustice, you know, obviously constructively and positively within the legal system. Then Allah puts us in some to force us to do that. And that's how He pushes us forward. And sometimes when things aren't easy, we don't get engaged. Only when our freedom and our liberty is at risk, that's when people often get engaged. So, you know, don't despair by Islamophobia. That's just a sign of Allah waking us up so that we can move forward. The best way to fight Islamophobia, there are two ways. As I mentioned, Islamophobes invest so much money to stay us away from practicing the deen. So the best way to fight Islamophobia is practice the deen more. You know, my shaykh said that, subhanAllah, you know, we see people draw out a cartoon, they say it's of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So some Muslims react by getting angry and protesting and burning things. What do? You just help Islamophobia. You help Islam look bad in the public. And we see that, you know, unfortunately nobody hurts the image of Islam today like Muslims themselves. Nobody. Wallahi, Islamophobes cannot hurt the deen as much as Muslims can hurt the deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us a source of people loving the deen, not turning away from the deen. So he said, my beloved friends, if you guys are really angry when Rasulullah or Islam is attacked, then follow the deen even more closely. For example, we let our sisters go out and wear hijab, and they're identified as Muslims, and they face Islamophobia, but us Muslim brothers, we like to blend in. No, if they make fun of hijab, if they make fun of Rasulullah, maybe every Muslim should go out with an outward sunnah, like a kufi. Yes, do it. And see if they attack Rasulullah again. No, they won't, because they'll see Muslims are following the deen even more. See, if we react violently, then they're just going to do it more and more, so we keep making Islam look bad. But if we react positively and hold on to the sunnah, even something as little as wearing the kufi, they'll see, oh, now they're holding on to the deen more. But don't just wear the kufi, that's not enough. Wear the kufi, but then do something good in society. Help your neighbor, help the poor, help the needy while being identified as a Muslim. That is the best way to challenge Islamophobia. And don't just leave that burden on our sisters. May Allah reward you, who are much braver than our brothers. The sunnah is rahmah. Sometimes we say, oh, sunnah is it's just a sunnah, brother. I don't have to do it, it's just a sunnah. What does sunnah mean? Sunnah means that which Allah loves. That's what sunnah means. Sunnah is a rahmah for us. And as I said in the khutbah, we have to translate that into a rahmah for the community. So the first thing is hold on to the deen even more. That's the best way to challenge Islamophobia and challenge the narrative that Islamophobia is promoting. The second way to counter Islamophobia is that we really have to, on an institutional level, support organizations that are fighting Islamophobia, because Islamophobia is an industry. And you can read all about it in a report. How many of you heard of the report Fear Inc.? Please raise your hand if you heard of the report Fear Inc. I want to see, really, raise your hand. Only 3-4 people? Arsalan, we have more work to do. Really, we have more work to do. Write this down. Please, read. Write this down. Download the report Fear Inc. You can download on Google, it's the first thing. It talks about how the Islamophobia industry is organized and operates. It's very well organized. You have your think tanks, you have your funders that pump, in that report it says 40 million, the total number is over 150 million, but they pump all this money to these think tanks who come up with the same lies against Islam and Muslims that echo it through the media and through politicians. So it's an organized effort. What does that mean? That means I just can't challenge it as an individual. Sometimes we like to challenge it as an individual. No, that's good. But work as an institution and plan as an institution, like organizations like CAIR and others, to challenge Islamophobia collectively, positively, proactively, and constructively. Wallahi, the Islamophobes, they love those who engage the system destructively. That's why we'll talk about today. The government spends billions of dollars. This is published in a study funded by the University of California. It spends billions of dollars, has about 15,000 people that are paid, many of whom to go in the masajid and brainwash mentally disturbed and disabled youth. I met one of them, really mentally insane. And they brainwash them to commit acts of terrorism and crimes, even though they could never do these things on their own. And they give them the power to do it, and then they arrest them, and they say, look, we caught another terrorist, now give us more funding for national security, and let's take away more rights. They're investing in promoting destructive engagement. Because when people engage destructively, then they cannot engage constructively. America is one of the few places in the world we can practice our deen freely. But if they can get enough people to engage the system destructively and cause harm to this nation, then we may lose that freedom. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. I want my children to be able to recite the Quran, to teach the Quran, to learn the Quran freely. They can't do that in Syria. There's many places in the world they can't do that. I need them to be free to do that here. In order to do that, we have to engage constructively, never, of course, destructively. We have to appreciate the freedom we have as Muslims in America, and then as part of our patriotism, as part of being patriotic Americans, defend that freedom. And of course, not just for all of us, but for all people. That's why at my office in CAIR, I'm proud that we have 5 full-time lawyers, only 2 of whom are Muslim, 3 of whom are not Muslim. The head of our civil rights director, she used to investigate discrimination for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, for the government. And she's fighting harder for our faith and our freedom than many of us are. Allah will ask us. You may ask, this is what the Islamophobes did to attack Islam. This is what non-Muslim lawyers did to defend Islam. What did you do to defend the deen? What did you do to defend my deen? What did you do to defend the Muslim who was oppressed because she wore her hijab? Or the brother who was oppressed because he said, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Rasulullah. If you did something, alhamdulillah, that's a great honor before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know the greatest jihad is to speak truth in the face of oppression. But if we don't do anything, then Allah may put us in a difficult situation where they means, Wallahi, I met a brother. May Allah guide him. And subhanAllah, outwardly he looks very religious. And I asked him, I said, brother, I will hire you, but I need some work done in my CAIR office. He said, no, I won't work for you. I said, brother, why? He said, because I don't believe in CAIR. I don't believe in what you guys do. He said, subhanAllah, you don't believe in defending civil rights? You don't believe in defending freedom of Muslims to practice the deen? I said, brother, be careful. Wallahi, I'm telling you right now. I don't know, it was just a feeling at the time. I don't know what inspired me. So wallahi, there will be a time when you need the help of CAIR, and you will come to us for help. He said, just mark my words. Sure enough, the brother comes to me, brother, my wife was kicked out while she was shopping because she was wearing the niqab. Can you help me? See, I told you. When you become arrogant, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may put you through some situations. That's not to say we're perfect. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our mistakes and our shortcomings. But we're only as strong as you make us as a community. And you CAIR as your organization, you need to invest in making it the best it can be. If you see us making mistakes, help us fix and overcome the mistakes. But invest in defending freedom before Allah puts us in a situation where we are forced to defend our freedom. And really, so I say the way of challenging Islamophobia is twofold. One is countering it directly by practicing the deen even more. Secondly is by pushing back institutionally against Islamophobia for two reasons. One is so the public can see the positive, beautiful message of Islam, so they don't on the day of judgment say, oh, I thought Islam was just about killing and raping, and our Muslim neighbors always kept their mouth shut. And then Allah asks us about that. We let the extremists hijack our religion. The other is so our children are not afraid to practice Islam growing up. So that our children are proud to be Muslim. We need to make a positive part. That's why it's our duty, my brothers and sisters, to challenge Islamophobia. The reason Islamophobes spend so much money to attack the deen is they recognize the immense power we have as Muslims in America, and they invest in Islamophobia to undermine the freedom and to cause destruction inside America and outside America. One of the professors, he wrote a book. Wallahi, this is a must-read for all Muslims in America as well. So take notes. I'm not here, I hope, to waste your time or my time. Allah, forgive me. My biggest fear, of course, is wasting people's time. So we need to, inshallah, despite my shortcomings, maybe may Allah bless us to engage in a few acts that can be constructive and rewarding, so we didn't just waste our time today. So write action items down. Another action item you can do, order the book. Is the Muslims are coming. Very important book to read. I would say required reading for all Muslims. Or even invite the professor, contact us, we can bring the professor here to speak to you. The Muslims are coming by Professor Arun Kudnani. He's non-Muslim professor at NYU. He wrote in his book, Islamophobia is a form of structural racism directed at Muslims in which it is sustained through a symbiotic relationship with the official thinking and the practices of the war on terrorism. Its significance does not lie primarily in the individual prejudice it generates, but in its wider political consequences. Its enabling of systematic violations of the rights of Muslims and its demonization of actions taken to remedy those violations. The war on terror, with its vast death tolls in Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen, and elsewhere, could not be sustained without the radicalized dehumanizations of the Muslim victims. So the Islamophobia, and again, this is the best place in the world, one of the best places in the world to be Muslim, and we have to appreciate and defend that. But that being said, Islamophobia is what's being used to justify the thousands and thousands of Muslims that are being killed worldwide. And the oppressive wars, when subhanAllah, a few terrorists do something in the name of Islam, and subhanAllah, ISIS, I mentioned it, it had on the front page of the LA Times that, Islamic State takes sex slaves. But buried in the deep end of the news, Assad's criminals rape many Muslim women. You don't read about that on the front page of the news. Assad kills 200,000 people and the world does nothing. Terrorists who call themselves Muslims kill a few thousand people and we condemn that, but you see the whole world moves now. There's a whole coalition. Again, there's prejudice in how these wars are fought, and a lot of it has to do with the dehumanization of Muslims in this country, and that's why we're responsible for this, because we live in one of the most powerful countries in the world, and we can have a tremendous impact on the policy of this nation. In the future, it's going to be increasingly difficult to win an election without the Muslim swing vote in many parts of this country. So we're in a position to create positive change when we engage constructively, and Allah will ask us. You are in a position more than anybody else in the world to create change. People tried to create change in Syria and they were killed because they tried to create a positive change. You're in a nation that protects your freedom to create positive change. Did you want to create positive change or not? And again, we're not responsible for the results. All we're responsible for is our actions. That's why, as I mentioned on Wednesday, Rasulullah said, if you see the day of judgment is about to start and you have a tree or a seed, what should you do? Plant it. Even though you won't see the results of planting that seed, but do it because you're responsible for the actions. Rabbul Alameen is responsible for the results. So we have tremendous power, wallahi, my brothers and sisters. If we change ourselves in America, wallahi, we have the power to change the world for the better, for all of humanity, not just for Muslims. If we change ourselves, we are the only thing standing in the way of our success. We just have to wake up and invest in defending our civil rights and the civil rights of all humanity, and in human rights and social justice for all people, just as those who hate Islam are also investing in attacking our deen. Or just as other minorities are, in fact, defending their religion as well, and their identity. That's all we have to do. You know, when Ibrahim Todashev, the young Muslim who was shot and killed by the FBI in Orlando, nobody spoke out against the FBI when they killed him. In fact, people were afraid to speak out for him. And I spoke, alhamdulillah, then at CAIR, we did an investigation, said, you know what, this was unjust, he was unarmed, it is unacceptable for the FBI to shoot and kill anybody. So we represented his family, and we did an investigation. We discovered the history of abuse and corruption. In fact, the FBI agents told his family, or told him and his friends, that you either spy for us on hookah lounges and mosques and halal restaurants, or we'll throw you in jail. This is what they told him and his friends 3 days before they killed him. This is why I say never speak to the FBI without a lawyer. If the FBI ever contacts you, contact CAIR for free. We will represent you and get them off your back. Over 35 Muslims in my office has helped this year who were contacted by the FBI, including all the major imams in our mosques. The minute they contacted CAIR, we contacted the FBI never bothered them again. It's only those who speak to them without a lawyer, they're the ones whose lives may get ruined sooner or later. So very important, never speak to the FBI without a lawyer, my brothers. I'm telling you this as a lawyer, not just as a Muslim. In fact, I've worked with prosecutors and government officials, and they'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you now. Wallahi. We need to respect the rule of law. The most unpatriotic thing you can do as an individual is to speak to the FBI without a lawyer. Why? Because you are ripping to shreds the Constitution, the Bill of Rights that the founding fathers of this country shed their blood so you and I have. They bled so you have the Fifth Amendment, the right to remain silent. They bled so you have the Sixth Amendment, the right not to speak to the police without a lawyer. And yet you're just going to discard it for nothing? Let them have died in vain? I wouldn't do that. That's ungratefulness. So never speak to the FBI without a lawyer. That's the American. If we have information to keep this country safe, we'll be the first to report it. Alhamdulillah. But otherwise, there's no reason to shred the Constitution. So anyway, and again, CAIR has free lawyers. Contact us if you face discrimination or harassment by the police or place of business or anything like that. Inshallah, stop by the CAIR table before you leave. But anyway, Wesley Lowry, you know what he told me? He said, Hassan, I wish Ibrahim was African American. He's African American himself. He said because if he was African American, all African Americans in this country would have risen up and demanded justice for him. They said, you Muslims are too afraid to stand up. And subhanAllah, we saw that now with the shooting of in Ferguson, where the entire African American community is saying, no, Black Lives Matter. You can't just kill our own and expect to get away with it without any justice. So they stood up for it. But the Muslim community, we were quiet when one of our own was killed. That's not to say we need to engage in protests and in burning things down. There's no room for that. But at the same time, we should not be afraid to challenge injustice. Now, I'll tell you the great thing is when we stood up for Ibrahim when he was killed by the FBI, I was scared, I'll be honest. I was terrified. I thought we were going to get all these letters now in the mail that you guys are terrorists and you're defending terrorists and all this nonsense. But wallahi, all of the media, from CNN to the Boston Globe itself wrote editorials supporting us. And all the reporters were sympathetic and supporting us because they saw it as an American issue. It's not just a Muslim issue, it's an American issue because Americans don't want to live in a country where FBI agents can kill you without there being accountability. Trust me, patriotic Americans care about the Constitution more than we do. So that's why they all stood with us. We were scared because we thought they would all turn against us. But wallahi, when we stood for truth, Allah rallied all the people under to support us. Don't be afraid for standing up for justice. And don't be afraid, and don't just do it as a Muslim issue. Alhamdulillah, at CAIR floor, we never frame our things as Muslim issues. Because that's the truth. They're not just Muslim issues, they're American issues. Justice, human rights, civil rights, the rule of law are all American issues. And that's why, alhamdulillah, Islam and America are so compatible and beautiful with each other, really. I think Muslim extremists and anti-Muslim extremists, they both promote this idea that you can't be a good Muslim and a good American. Both of them promote that message. And we reject that. And we appreciate the freedom this country has, but it's our duty to organize to defend it. I'll read you another quote from Professor Deepak Kumar, and we'll try to end within the next 7 minutes or so to leave time for some questions and answers. She says, when a nation goes to war, enemy, it inevitably turns against those it sees as incarnations of that enemy within its borders. The situations of Muslims in the U.S. today bears a strong resemblance to that of Japanese Americans during World War II. What happened to Japanese Americans during World War II? They were thrown in internment camps in this country. Statistically, Americans are more likely to die from a bolt of lightning than from an act of terrorism. So you're actually more likely to get killed by police officers than by terrorists. You're more likely to drown in your bathtub than to be killed by terrorists. Now, how much money has been invested in protecting people from bathtubs? Do we have a war on bathtubs? We don't see it. But that's the bigger risk. Statistically, you're more likely to get killed by that toddler, that 3-year-old over there than by terrorists. Really. Don't look back at yourself. That's the reality. Statistically, 3-year-olds have killed more Americans than terrorists have. But we don't find any money being spent to defend Americans from toddlers. Again, this shows that it's politically motivated. It is not to keep us safe. In fact, Islamophobia makes us less safe and less free because when you focus just on Muslims, you miss the overwhelming majority of threats to this country that have nothing to do with our religion. In fact, some studies show Muslims are 1,000 times less likely to commit a crime than other people are. And that's not what our new teaches. But we need to reclaim our faith from against Islamophobes inside the community and outside our community that are trying to distort it and hijack it. And it's our responsibility to speak out to the public. As I mentioned Wednesday, we're the mirrors that reflect Islam. People don't see the Quran or Rasulullah, they see me and you. If we're clean mirrors, we'll reflect the beauty and the mercy of Islam to all those around us. If we're dirty, we're only going to reflect dirtiness. So make sure we're clean mirrors reflecting the beauty of Islam to all humanity, and work with institutions, work with Brother Hassan, work with your masjid to institutionally counter Islamophobia and to struggle. You know why we face Islamophobia? It's just for one reason. Allah wants us to see that we struggle a little bit for the deen. That's it. So we can prove our love for Him and He can give us the high status. If things were easier than that, and we don't have any Islamophobia in America, then we don't have opportunity to struggle for the deen. Then we can't attain that high rank before Allah. Allah wants us to prove our love for Him. The question is not, are we wealthy or powerful or richer or poor? It is, how is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Allah gives us opportunities. That's the beauty of Islamophobia. It gives us an opportunity to offer some sacrifice for the deen. Whether it is wearing a hijab and putting up with some discrimination, whether it is donating so CAIR has full-time lawyers to defend our sisters who are wearing the hijab. That's all forms of striving. Whether it is joining Muslim Capital Day, paying $10, $20 to go to your Capitol Hill and say, look, this is what we are about, and this is how we're going to make society better, and we want to work with you, O legislator, to make America better for all people, because that's what Islam teaches us. Do it. When I visited, I visited Washington, D.C., man, they would tell me, every day we get tons of people visiting us, telling us to support Israel. But I never get a Muslim come to visit me and tell me anything about peace in the Middle East or what Islam is about or what Muslims are about. They're not even aware of some of the challenges our community is facing because we're not making our voices heard. And that's either because we're lazy or we don't believe in working in the system. No, we have to engage the system. The system isn't perfect, but Allah is better than most others, and it fixes itself when you engage it. And don't lack imagination that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can guide all humanity and guide this nation through our sincere, hard work. And even if we don't see it before our eyes, we get the ajr before Allah. Always make your intention greater. That's the beauty thing of the believer. His intention is always greater than his rewards, than his actions. Make the intention that, I'm going to engage constructively, I'm going to do great work. And maybe through that good work, Allah will guide all humanity, guide America, and make America a source of success for the whole world. And therefore, you get the world to making the whole world a better place by being a good American Muslim in this country, challenging injustice, speaking up for your faith, not being afraid to speak truth to power, but engaging constructively. So Deepak Kumar continues, statistically, Americans are more likely to die from a bolt of lightning than from an act of terrorism. The focus on radicalized American Muslims serve not to keep the American people safe, but to whip up a sense of fear and paranoia, which can be used to squash dissent and win consent for violations of civil rights at home and abroad. Again, the same message that Islamophobia is being used right now to take away freedom of Americans in America and to justify wars overseas. And therefore, it's our duty first and foremost as American Muslims to challenge that use of Islamophobia. to make the world a better place for everyone. We can have a tremendous impact, inshallah, if we work strongly. One of the shames is that Islamophobia today is higher than it was even after 9/11. After 9/11, about 40% of Americans had a negative image of Islam. In 2010, it was 50%. 1 in 2 Americans said Muslims should have to wear special ID cards. What was the last group that had to do that? What was the last group? The Jews in Germany. Well, I was sitting at an interfaith panel in Florida, and the rabbi said, if you take everything that's being said about Islam and Muslims in America today, and you switch it out with Jews, I'll think I'm in Germany 60, 70 years ago. It's the same hatred. And that's what we have to recognize as Muslims in America. What we're facing today is no different than what other groups have faced before us and what other groups continue to face. So we need to stand shoulder to shoulder, even with the Jewish community, even with the African American community, with everybody to stand up against the racism and intolerance, because it's all the same thing. Really, it is good versus evil. It is the evil of racism, intolerance, arrogance, greed, hate, versus the beautiful mercy of the Deen, which came to establish justice and honor human beings. Islam came to honor human beings, to take them out of darkness and slavery to each other, to free them as servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should let that drive us, that we should have hope that Allah guides all humanity through our efforts. Very quickly, as I mentioned, Islamophobia promotes the same sort of fear and hatred that was being promoted against the Jewish community. They say Islamophobia, Islam is not a religion, it wants to destroy all people. Most Muslims are terrorists, most terrorists are Muslims, and all Muslims are liars. Word for word, that was what was being promoted against the Jewish community previously. So we have to challenge that framework, we have to challenge that narrative, and we do that as a group. And inshallah, as we do that, we'll start to see tremendous success and victory, as we did in this video. My brothers and sisters, we should never lose hope. Rather, we have hope that Allah can accomplish great things through us. Hajar radiallahu anha, I take a beautiful inspiration from her when she was left in the desert by her father Ibrahim alayhi salam. What did she do? Did she just sit? She didn't have any water. Did she just sit and pray, Ya Allah, send me water? She didn't. Did she just run around looking for water? She didn't. She combined both the action and the dua. Nowadays, as Muslims, we go to extreme, one or the other. You have Muslims who mashallah become lawyers and invest in civil rights, do great work, but their connection with the deen is weak, unfortunately. Or you have Muslims who mashallah in the masjid all the time, but are not doing anything for the community. Alhamdulillah, there are now more and more people who are combining both. That's what we need. We run looking for the water, we do our sa'i, we are making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. And by combining our ibadah and our action, we can make the world a better place for all people. That is a part of the command of our deen. So as a result of the Islamophobia industry, unfortunately, we see increasing discrimination against Muslims in employment. We see anti-Muslim laws. We see now a whole effort to ban textbooks that teach positively about Islam. We see efforts in zoning to close down masajid and anti-Muslim law enforcement training. The FBI Asian Provocateur program where they're paying people to brainwash our youth and hate crimes against the Muslim community. But we can have a tremendous impact. We can do that, and these are the action items I'm going to leave with you today. One is to stand up against Islamophobia and law enforcement. Know your rights. Maybe we can do, if we haven't, I'm sure they've done one, another Know Your Rights training. What are our rights? What is the Constitution? How can we protect the Constitution? The best piece of advice I give you today is never, ever, 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 ever speak to the FBI without a lawyer as an individual. Never do that. Wallahi, I say, only the ignorant or the arrogant. Wallahi, only the ignorant or the arrogant. Only the ignorant or the arrogant, and Allah is my witness. And I'm willing to stand up on the day of judgment and repeat this. Speak to the FBI as individuals without a lawyer. You're either ignorant of the law or of the FBI tactics. And we support them to make this country safe, but because actually at CAIR we discovered they had thousands of pages of anti-Muslim training. Actually, one of the Asians said, Al-Qaeda is the enemy, Islam is the enemy. He's the one that's trained the FBI agents. So there's some bad apples out there. So you're arrogant, you know the problem, but you think it won't affect you. And wallahi, I've seen too many arrogant or ignorant brothers. May Allah cleanse us, it's not to judge each other, but ruin their lives or the community because of speaking up here about lawyers. So never speak to no lawyer, know your rights. And then defend your rights, defend civil rights, defend the Constitution for all people, and hold on to the deen while doing good work for the community. That is the best way that we can challenge Islamophobia. Maybe Brother Arslan can say a brief message about some action items, how you can support CAIR's efforts, inshallah, very practically to challenge Islamophobia. As he's mentioned, one is by joining Lobby Day. It's our duty to support Lobby Day as Muslims. Go out and represent your faith, because the Islamophobes are working day and night to represent our faith. Also report any acts of discrimination and join the counter Islamophobia neutrality. With that, Brother Hassan, and then we'll leave it for any questions or answers or anything that was unclear. Jazakallah khair.
Thanks, Brother Hassan. I'll just elaborate on the three things that you mentioned. He mentioned 3 action alerts. So the first thing you mentioned were report cases. So I'll give you an example. We had a person who worked in a school district locally here. He was told over and over again by his bosses that, you know, if you take some time to pray or take some time to break your thought, you'll be in big trouble, basically meaning you'll be fired. He took that and just, you know, put up with it for many, many months until he just couldn't take it anymore. He was having nightmares. He contacted us. We met with the school district. We had many pro bono attorneys. We met with the school district afterward. Now the person works in a different school in the same school district, has different supervisors, prays and does whatever he wants. He was given a monetary amount also as a compensation for what he has suffered. And we did training for the school district, and we had changes in their policy so that it never again, ideally, happens again in that same school district. That school district, it might surprise you, was the Bellevue School District, right? And there's many more school districts that we are working with. So you wouldn't imagine it, but it happened in the Bellevue School District. But the good thing that he did is he came forward and reported. And that's what we want you to do. When something happens to you, write it down and contact us. All of our services are free of charge. We have the best attorneys who volunteer with us. Among the best attorneys who charge $600 an hour plus, who work on our cases because they know that we're fighting for the right causes. It's not just frivolous cases, right? So contact us for help whenever you or your children are targeted for anything. Number 2, you mentioned Lobby Day. So I'll give you a quick example. 4 years ago, we were making appointments for our first Lobby Day in the year 2010. Lawmakers did not know that they had Muslims in their districts. Tri-Cities is in central Washington. Many of you know that area. The staff member there had a very hard time believing me that we had Muslims coming from her district. And then she saw about 2 vans full coming to meet with her bosses, the senator from that district. So that was a long time ago, of course. Where we are today is that we're helping pass laws. Last year we helped pass the DREAM Act. The year before that we helped pass a law that gave Medicaid, I think it was, to 250,000 more people than had before we put that effort forth, right? So we're making real laws pass. It's not simply a matter of meeting with lawmakers, it's to get real results. The next Lobby Day will be happening on MLK Day, as it does every year. It's in Olympia. We have buses that go from your city to Olympia and bring you right back. It's only $10 per person for the ticket. $10 per person for the buses, so $20 a person if you buy the tickets before the deadline, and we have tickets being sold at that CAIR booth. So that's the number 2 thing. Number 3, you mentioned the responding to media. So you would not believe that the New York Times public editor is taking note about their use of language about Islam and Muslims. The public editor is sort of an ombudsman for the New York Times, the flagship newspaper in America. Because many of you wrote to her and said, why are you taking 7 events that happened over 7 years all over the world and try to say that there's some sort of a trend, an increase in violence by Muslims? There's no trend, there's no logical connection between these events that happen all over. They're taking note, they're understanding. There's a lot of ignorance, a lot of unawareness. I mean, her response was that, well, they weren't lifelong Muslims, they were converts to Islam, as if that helps. So there's still a lot of education we have to do to help them understand the latent biases that they have. But if you would like to help make that happen with papers all around, sign up for our letters to the editor's team. If you are able to commit to writing 1 letter to an editor of a national newspaper or a national broadcast station. Our booth is outside. You would have to walk over there and sign up for that list. If you can commit to writing 1 letter to an editor of the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC per week, we will send you the action list over email. We'll give you the talking points. So you can sign up for that in the booth. That is making a difference. I mean, CAIR people can put on our suits and meet with them in official meetings, but until we have hundreds and hundreds of people writing to them, reinforcing our message, media coverage of Islam Muslims will not change. And we know that their media reporters are our allies. They're our allies. They need our help to report on our community better. They want to do a good job, but they need a lot of help, as we're finding. So we need your help in reinforcing that message. So report cases, sign up for Lobby Day outside of at the booth, sign up for action alerts at the booth outside of the women's hall at the main entrance.
With that, inshallah, if there was anything that wasn't clear, answer them.
Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum and jazakallahu khair. Jazakallahu khair. This was actually wonderful, and I want to actually reiterate thank you very much for doing this. Thank you to CAIR at the level of the United States and CAIR of Washington. And yes, I agree with you. As a user of CAIR, having used CAIR for the same purpose they were saying, never talk to the FBI, I used CAIR for that, and I can tell you everybody should know about CAIR. And by the way, to add to it, Bill Clinton was asked to testify, and he was asked by the FBI. He refused to talk to them, only with the presence of lawyers, even Bill Clinton himself. So yeah, he's not lying. Jazakallah khair. So my question is twofold, and this is maybe not directly related to Islamophobia. Recently, CAIR has been labeled as a terrorist organization by some brotherly countries, not to mention them, not to offend anyone. What is CAIR doing about that? And the second side of the question is, what is the impact of that, excuse my language, stupid decision, did to the view of the American government towards CAIR?
Jazakallah for that very helpful comment and feedback and support, and that excellent question. You know, subhanAllah, I wonder if Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Sahaba lived amongst us, what that government would have called them at our time. You know? Sorry? Yeah, subhanAllah. So, the idea is this. When I heard of the United Arab Emirates, that's what it is. We'll be very straightforward. I mean, it's very public. When the UAE labeled CAIR along with MAS, Islamic Relief, and just about every major Muslim organization in Europe as terrorist organizations, we said, you know what we're going to do? We have to contact Dubai's or United Arab Emirates democratically elected president, their independent judiciary, and their democratically elected Congress to challenge this. But then, we realize they don't have any of that. You know, it's a dictatorship. And unfortunately, what they've done is they're trying to bully Western Muslims just like they bully their own people. You know, I visited Saudi Arabia. If we wanted to have a halaqah about Islam in Saudi Arabia, we weren't allowed to do that. A halaqah on Islam, the police would shut us down. And unfortunately, Muslims in the Middle East, they don't have freedom. And what they're scared of is they see Muslims in the West, they have tremendous freedom. And they're afraid of the impact free individuals can have on their dictatorships. So therefore, in order to demonize and undercut, just like this, Rasulullah was called Sa'ir, Majnoon, crazy. Now in our time, we're called terrorists. You know, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something beautiful. لا تحسبوا شرا لكم بل هو خير لكم. Don't think it's bad for you, it's good for you. And subhanAllah, we saw that because it actually couldn't have happened at a worse time for me. The day that UAE called CAIR along with all the other organizations, terrorist organizations, it happened on the day of our banquet fundraiser in South Florida. And my banquet, which was the Tampa one, was a week later. So subhanAllah, it could have been worse. We raised more money in those banquets than we did in the whole last year, about $575,000. One brother, he called me, by the way, he works for Apple, so those who work for Microsoft need to compete. He said, he called me like 2 weeks ago, he said, brother, I want to give CAIR this year, forgive me, I can only give CAIR $25,000 to $35,000, I'm sorry. He said, MashaAllah, you know, I wish that everybody had that problem. So I said, Jazaka, that's a lot of money. Wallah, he called me the day before our banquet, he said, I'm going to give you guys $100,000 now. And actually at the banquet, he gave $140,000 alone, one person. So it increased our support, alhamdulillah, and actually increased the support for the American Muslims, because the American Muslims sent a message to you that you guys can't bully us with your nonsense, and it hurt the credibility of the United Arab Emirates. And also, what the message that it sends our youth is it doesn't matter if you become a terrorist, you really like join ISIS or Al-Qaeda, or you engage in social justice organizations, civil rights organizations, we're all going to label you the same. It sends a very dangerous message to the youth that you'll all be labeled the same, whether you engage constructively or destructively. That's not the kind of message we want to send. So at CAIR, of course, we've been engaging in multiple levels. We've been engaging with the governor of UAE to challenge this crazy thing. Now, what people don't know is that UAE don't know. How many people have heard of Stephen Emerson? Anybody? He's one of the leading Islamophobes in this country, right? Head of the investigative project on terrorism, labeling just about every major mainstream Muslim leader terrorist, this and that, and all the others like Daniel Pipes and the others. So the UAE's been paying $400,000 a month to an organization that's run by one of Emerson's closest co-workers, former co-workers and employees, to lobby for them in America. So they're really embedded in Islamophobes. So I think the best response that we have to them is we actually increase our efforts to challenge injustice. We increase our efforts to work with our allies. the NAACP LULAC, the Board of Bar. I'll tell you, in Florida, even after this happened, we had a senator come and speak at our banquet. We had many letters of representatives, and we had several elected officials come to our Tampa banquet a week later. Really, they don't care. The Americans actually, it was offensive to America because where's CAIR Washington's office? It's on the Capitol Hill. So they're saying that Americans have a terrorist organization on their Capitol Hill. That's an insult to America, and the Department of State came up very clearly and said, no, we don't, we reject this labeling. It's meaningless. And again, these are dictatorships. If you go and you speak about freedom of religion or justice or human rights, you're going to get labeled terrorist. So when dictatorships attack us, we take that as a badge of honor. And alhamdulillah, it doesn't have any practical impact on us. In fact, it's only increased our support, and we'll continue. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think it's a sign when we're upsetting dictators, that's a sign we're pleasing Rabbul Alameen, inshallah. But yeah. Any of the sisters have any questions? Or brothers, no? Yes, brother.
What's CAIR doing? We're sitting at
Jazakumullah khair for all you know. Inshallah, Hassan,
the FBI's provocateur and the informant program has been very open, either it's with us, against us. So what is CAIR doing in order to initiate a bill at the national level to prevent such actions?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Allah reward you. That's the kind of thinking that we need. So I mentioned on Wednesday. By the way, how many people were here Wednesday? I just want to know so I'm not repeating myself. Okay, good. We see a lot of new people. So brothers and sisters who were here Wednesday, allow me to repeat myself for anything, inshallah, for people in there. But on Wednesday, I mentioned that CAIR, we went and visited more members of Congress than any Muslim organization in the history of America did. First it was like 90 members, then it was like 100. Now I think last our song was at 170 or something like that. Basically, we ended up actually visiting a third, and that's terrible. That's only a third of what's out there. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of lobbying. We need more support. You know, CAIR in Washington DC only has one full-time government affairs person. CAIR Washington has how many full-time government affairs people? 0. Whose fault is that? Ours. So maybe one thing after the talk we get 10 people who will say, you know what, I'm going to give $300 a month so CAIR can hire for $3,000 a month because we're extremely, mashallah, underpaid as we mentioned, but alhamdulillah, we don't say Allah. But really, $300 a month to invest in civil rights and government affairs representation. And we can do that. I think our side can hire someone for that amount. Because mashallah, people who are in CAIR aren't doing it, mashallah, for the money, but to serve the community, but they need a basic level of support. So one of the things when I met with the members of Congress, I told them about the FBI's Asian Provocateur program. I told them, I have a client who was basically shown a picture of a naked woman. He was an imam and said, this woman will testify you're using her for prostitution unless you work for us. And this was sort of his fault. Why didn't he meet with them without a lawyer? That's on him. But of course, that doesn't give them the right to create false charges to blackmail. And I'll tell you, the jaw on the congressman or his staffer, really his jaw dropped when he said this. He said, I've never heard about this. So we don't know about it. And the problem is, that's the problem. Most members of Congress are not aware that this happened. So I think we need to increase our organized efforts within Congress. And we actually have a plan right now where we're going to expose to Congress the abuse that the FBI engaged in against my client in Orlando. We have letters prepared. We're about to release that in a couple of months, and to call on Congress to reevaluate the hiring policies, because what we discovered was the FBI hired a person who used to work in Oakland, California. He beat up suspects. He was sued twice for beating up suspects and witnesses, and investigated 4 times for doing that, and then he got hired as an FBI agent. That's the kind of people being hired. So we're working to challenge that. But the biggest and most effective thing that we can do, I think, is right now we are working with the Muslim community to educate them about the Asian Provocateur program. I think as long as we're aware about it, we can protect ourselves. And the way we can protect ourselves is twofold. We're actually working with author Trevor Aronson, who did a book publishing, who published a book on this called The Terror Factory, Inside the FBI's Manufacturing War on Terrorism, which speaks about this. And in Florida, we took him to just about every major masjid in Florida to speak. And now he has a documentary. This masjid will allow us to come again, inshallah. We'll be happy to bring Trevor. We can bring the documentary. We must play it over here. You should all watch it. It's a must-watch documentary. CAIR will sponsor it, inshallah. We'll take care of it and bring it here if the masjid will inshallah, allow it, inshallah. Or, a very important program to have. So educate the community, because as long as we're educated, they can't hurt us. And the way I say it is this. There's 2 subjects of an FBI Asian Provocateur program. One is the provocateur, and 2 is the subject of entrapment. So the provocateur is the one whose arm is twisted by the FBI to work for them and brainwash you. This could be some of your most religious and practicing Muslims in the community. The FBI is saying, we're going to throw your wife in jail if you don't work for us. So then that brother is throwing people in jail. Well, we had a person in New York City. They say he mashallah, had dressed like in the sunnah, had a long beard, and he would cry so much in salah that he was the one that was working for the FBI. Maybe that's why he was crying in salah. So it could be anybody. Sometimes we just think it's the stereotypical convert in the community. No, it's not necessarily that person. And so the way to protect against becoming an informant is never meet with the FBI without a lawyer. That's the best way. As long as you don't meet with them without a lawyer, they can't pressure you to be an informant. The way to protect against becoming an agent against the subject of an agent provocateur or subject of entrapment, as I would say, don't disobey Allah and you won't break the law. So you have somebody coming to you, speaking to you about cheating on your taxes or committing a criminal act, report him to CAIR because he's most likely working for the government. And that's what happens most of the time in Florida, even in California. We get people in the community speaking about committing acts of terrorism. We report them to the government. It turns out the governments are doing it because he's working for them. And we're right now working with reporters to continue to expose this. So educate the community and invest in the government affairs program. That's the answer, inshallah, in a nutshell. Yes, sister. Did we have two questions too? Maybe give it to the sister and then we'll take it over there.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair for this presentation. I wanted to ask you, it seems like you're saying the FBI is the mainly responsible party for creating this Islamophobia and targeting the Muslim community. But isn't there also a legislative branch that's kind of concurring with this kind of action?
So it isn't, I don't think it's the Islamophobia, the FBI that's creating Islamophobia, not at all. I think what there is, as we mentioned in the CAIR Inc. report, there's an organized Islamophobia industry that has think tanks. Now, how many Muslim think tanks do we have in America? I don't even think we have one real full-fledged Islamic think tank, Muslim think tank. So there's think tanks, they get millions of dollars in support, and then they create these lies against the Muslim community, and it has 7 major effects on it. One of the major effects is impacting how the FBI treats American Muslims. And that really undermines the FBI's mission to keep America safe. So we stand up against these policies, not because we're against the FBI, but because we support the FBI's mission to keep America safe, and we believe these policies make America less safe and less free, so we challenge it. And yes, there's members of Congress that are promoting Islamophobia as well. And the reason they can do that is because not enough Muslims are voting. And not enough Muslims are aware of what's happening in politics a lot. Some Muslims say they don't want to be engaged in politics. When you say you don't want to be engaged in politics, that means you don't want to be engaged in the decisions that affect your life. So we certainly need to engage in proactive approaches. But study the Islamophobia industry and support CAIR's efforts to challenge Islamophobia, inshallah, and through that we can be successful. Sister asked a question, Assalamu alaikum. In New York, there are anti-Muslim signs on buses and in subway stations. Is CAIR doing anything to counter that? Excellent question. In this country they have the freedom. And this is what embarrasses me, man. I'm afraid I'll stand before Allah and He'll show me how many millions of dollars Islamophobes spent to put messages on buses attacking Islam. And He'll say, Hassan, what did you do to counter that message? Did you spend from your wealth or your money or your time or your energy? So what we're doing is not by trying to stop them legally from putting that message, because they have the freedom in America to put that message up. But what we're trying to do is countering it by promoting positive messages. In Florida, we bought a lot of bus ads showing a beautiful positive image of Islam to the public. We also generate millions of dollars in positive publicity for the Muslim community by working with reporters. So the best thing we're doing, I think, to counter that message is by, first of all, purchasing positive publicity, but working with the media to create positive stories, and most importantly, offering services to the community. So at CAIR Florida, everybody knows if you're African American or you're Latino and you're discriminated against, even if you're white or you're a woman and you're discriminated against, CAIR Florida and Muslims will defend you. So we're giving something back to the community, and that's the best way we can fight Islamophobia, is by giving something positive back to the public. We need your support to continue to do that, inshallah. Yes, brother.
behind? Have you thought?
Very good. If we have a computer, can we go to fearinc.com and we can show it real quick. The Fear Inc. basically, it shows there are 7 foundations, like the Clarion Fund, the Heritage Foundations, about 7 other institutions that are described in the Fear Inc. report.
who is behind and why?
Yeah, so I'm getting to it. They are the identifiable organizations who pump millions of dollars to several anti-Muslim experts like Daniel Pipes, Stephen Emerson, Robert Spencer, Pamela Geller, who then make up lies against the Muslim community and to promote against the public. There's also a lot of financial support coming from the Israeli government to do this as well, because they're afraid generally that if Muslims vote and they engage the system constructively in America, they'll impact America's foreign policy eventually and make it less blindly pro-Israel, more fair to the Palestinian people, and therefore it will be bad in Israel's interest. So a lot of these are like super Zionists or extreme right-wing Zionists that are behind Islamophobia. Some do it because personally they make a lot of money. Like if we switch sides, you would make easily 7 figures for more than selling Islamophobia in this country. But and some do it because they really believe they can keep Muslims afraid, keep Muslims from being engaged, and keep Islam looking bad, so that America never becomes truly supportive to the Palestinian cause. And the fear and details the report, inshallah.
Is it more fruitful to go, at least to have some going after these root cause, and at the same time do the work of the other work, but also go after how to root out these roots?
No, I agree. I mean, it's important. So we have some initiatives to expose Islamophobes. Now we opened up a new website, Islamophobia.org, which exposes them and their connections and their bad feelings and their cheating and their crimes and all these things. So we're doing that to expose them to the public. I mean, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work to do that. But really, I think the time is better spent, instead of attacking them, it's in building our community. I think the time is better spent investing in our community, getting our children to be proud of being American Muslims, getting our children to engage the media, engage in law, engage in politics, and do good work without even addressing them, because we don't want to fall into their narrative. If they call us terrorists, we're not saying we're not terrorists, because then we're engaging in their narrative. That's why I said we should read the book, Don't Think of an Elephant. Rather, don't even worry about what they're calling us. Excel in your field, do good work while representing us, and that's the best way to undermine it, inshallah. Allah.
Inshallah. We are over an hour. I think there's another program that Hassan has with Hassan. So inshallah with that, I will assist.
And that one quick message before they close it is I want to have a challenge for the community. Was Hassan here or no? Hassan, you own your building or you're renting it? Renting it, okay. That's okay. He didn't want to, nobody asked me to do this, and forgive me if I say this. Within the past year, CAIR Florida had one brother who was actually a doctor. He lent us over $600,000, which he doesn't want to pay back. It was sitting in his bank account. He said, Haram, this money's not benefiting me. So here it is, and I'm buying new property with that. From that property, we're using core office space. The rest is being rented to make income. So CAIR is self-sustaining, so our children don't have to worry about how to support CAIR. And you get a great tax deduction. He gets it back after a certain amount of years anyway, so it's not a worry. So my challenge for this community, your organization that's defending Islam and Muslims shouldn't have to worry about paying rent. Somebody may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you guys. Think about how CAIR can have an endowment when its office is self-sustaining. The other thing is we have one brother who works for Apple, and he's not a senior person in Apple, but he's given about $300,000, almost $200,000 worth of stock to CAIR. So we have an endowment which is going and helping pay CAIR's expenses. We have many people who work with Microsoft. Start thinking about an endowment. CAIR should be self-sustaining, inshallah, so we can have a government affairs person. So our children don't have to worry about defending rights. Inshallah,
we have lunch for you for brothers and sisters. There are 2 stations. So after the lunch, about 10 minutes, we would pray Asr earlier today. That all of you are here, you don't have to come back. And next Friday, on the 5th December, Friday Family Night, we have another guest speaker. He will be visiting from Sacramento. He is the Imam there, Imam of Salam Center, Imam Adi. So inshallah, try to be here by 7:45 next Friday.